He's threatened to arrest election officials who cheated. We know that he believes a lot of people cheated that did not cheat. He wants
if you violate the law, you should be arrested. Yes.
No one disagrees with that, but he's talking
Apparently
about...
you do, based on the way you're asking the question.
No.
Tapper, you have to realize right now, if they win, you're going to jail. You know that, right? Look at him. Look at what he just said. If you violate the law, you get arrested. Well, yeah, everyone agrees with that. Clearly, you don't. So it's literally like a 1-step, 2-step, 3-step. Anyone who violates the law should go to jail. Anyone I say violates the law has violated the law. If you say those who I claim have violated the law haven't, then you're in favor of law violating and you should go to jail too. This is how it happens every single time. This is a threat. You are being threatened. You guys want to watch a weird asshole yammer? Well, you've already got that. Do you guys want to watch another weird asshole yammer? One who has a slightly worse beard? Let's go.
Senator Vance, good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let me ask you, obviously, Trump's former Chief of Staff, General John Kelly, was alarmed, he says, by what he heard when Trump said he wanted to use the National Guard or the Pentagon to go after the enemy within America.
That is slightly alarming, I would agree. I would say, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, which, like, in terms of what statements are a foul portent for times to come, this would be like a solid 10 out of 10. I would struggle to imagine something worse.
Americans with whom he disagrees, including the Pelosi's, Adam Schiff. And then he gave an interview. He said that Trump, quote, certainly falls into the general definition of fascist, that he is, quote, certainly an authoritarian, admires people who are dictators. You've called him a disgruntled former employee. But why shouldn't Americans out there listen to somebody who worked closely with Trump, worked with him longer than you've worked with him, retired 4-star Marine general, served his country honorably, who is conservative, who says he agrees with Trump on most policies, but is worried about this aspect of Trump?
So let me say two things in response. So first of all, a lot of what John Kelly, pretty much all of what John Kelly accuses Donald Trump of saying, there were other people in the room, Mike Pence's former chief of staff, for example, who've explicitly said Donald Trump never said those things, right? So one, on
Mike Pence,
well, okay, so first of all, the problem with saying that is that Donald Trump has said a lot of those things in public multiple times during speeches. Donald Trump glazes dictators constantly. He was literally on Joe Rogan the other day, just yesterday, and Joe Rogan was like, and Donald Trump was like, you know, these dictators, they're so smart, they're so great. And Joe Rogan was like, well, they're evil. And Donald Trump was like, well, there are evil people in America. That was literally what Donald Trump said in response. That was literally like his immediate response. That was like, there are evil people within, actually, you know? So there's that. Also, the enemy within, I want to deploy the military against people who disagree with me. That's also public knowledge. So like, it's we're only like corroborating information we already know that Donald Trump has claimed.
Guy who's not going to support Trump because
Mike Pence's former chief of staff said that Donald Trump didn't say those things, right? So that's number one. Number two, I actually think there's an interesting conversation here to have, Jake, which is why does John Kelly not support Donald Trump? It's about policy. It's actually not about personality.
He says he...
When you've got your like preloaded script ready to go. Why does John Kelly, this conservative ghoul, not support Trump? It's actually because of policy. When the opening question was, it's not policy, it's because of these things.
He agrees with Trump on most policy.
No.
He agrees with Trump on most policy.
No.
He disagrees with Trump on how Trump views his role and his and the fascism and the authoritarianism.
I don't buy that, Jake. I don't buy that, because if you actually look at John Kelly, at folks like Liz Cheney, the fundamental disagreement they have with Donald Trump is even though they say that they're conservative in the sense that they want America to get involved in a ton of ridiculous military conflicts. They want America to police the world, and Donald Trump wasn't.
John Kelly lost a son in Afghanistan. Why are you saying that he, like, I've never heard John Kelly say whether he supports of Iraq or Afghanistan.
And I honor his son's sacrifice, and I honor his family's sacrifice. That doesn't mean he's not wrong about policy.
What specifically are you talking about? What has he said?
Is your argument that a person who lost a son...
I think this is one of the like clearest examples that you can find of J.D. Vance's role, in that he has been put here by the powers that be in order to get the agenda done while Donald Trump is busy, like, kids in the Oval Office and like enjoying the last years of his life, like in a big fancy mahogany chair or whatever, you know, like, yeah, he's Trump's nanny. Where J.D. Vance will often attempt to put forward Like he's a puppet, and his job here is to basically massage like whatever idiotic idiosyncrasies Trump displays like on their way to the White House, right? Like it's very inconvenient for JD Vance that Donald Trump keeps publicly saying the stuff that JD Vance denies that he says at all, right?
Afghanistan can't be wrong about public policy.
I'm asking
then
you,
why
no.
bring that up? Let's talk about public policy,
because you were
I've
asking,
never criticized his service or
I
his
brought it
son's
up because
service.
you're acting as if he is pro-war, and I've never heard him say whether or not he supported the war in Afghanistan or the war in Iraq. He was a general carrying out orders.
Also, Donald Trump supported the war in Iraq. Am I misremembering that? Donald Trump is a hawk. He's never not been a hawk. He constantly talks about military strength and bullying other countries. He was pro-Iraq war. Then he said he didn't. Well, of course he lied, but Haktua? Banger.
I know John Kelly's worldview, and I know the people who have attacked Donald Trump the most vociferously on foreign policy. They'll say, well, he's a dictator, when what they really mean is they won't listen. Donald Trump wouldn't listen to the leadership of the military when they wanted him to start ridiculous conflicts. That is a consistent theme.
This is, by the way, this is also like absolute horseshit. The Pentagon doesn't initiate wars. Can somebody find me an example of this being the case? The president does. The president is the head. First of all, the president calls the shots militarily. Second of all, the reason we get involved in these foreign conflicts is usually due to like a really complicated interwoven, doesn't Congress start wars? Oh, go back to grade school. We're here in the real world, okay? Congress doesn't do shit. Thank you. The president is in charge when it comes to the use of the military. Thank you. And it's almost always like an extension of our realpolitik, of our diplomatic will. Like the Pentagon, like think for example with Dick Cheney and George Bush, right? Where Colin Powell essentially like bullied into lying to the United Nations. I just don't buy the idea that the Pentagon is the one calling the shots here. Donald Trump is perfectly capable of stoking the flames of war himself. Look at what he's been doing with Israel. Like non-stop, like of his own. I don't think that he's consulting the Pentagon, you know, before he's going out there saying like, you know, if anything, Israel needs to finish the job. They need to be more aggressive. I think the idea that the Pentagon is fighting their own like shadow war might have been a little bit more accurate back during like the Cold War. I don't think that's necessarily the case today. There's just too many phones everywhere, man. You can't get away with Iran-Contra shit in the same way anymore. Everything is so public, you know?
And I think that there's a big thing going on in American politics. It's a very interesting theme in American foreign policy, where a lot of former members of the Pentagon bureaucracy, a lot of old neoconservatives, they have a fundamental difference with Donald Trump on the question of peace and war. I believe Donald Trump is the candidate of peace. I think the record supports that. But
keep in mind, like Biden actually has been the most, in terms of like American military involvement, it's been Biden who's been the most peaceful in recent history by far. Scaled down the drone war to basically nothing, pulled out of Afghanistan, whereas Donald Trump escalated with Iran by striking Soleimani, backed Saudi Arabia in the genocide in Yemen, 500,000 civilians dead through starvation and sanctions that he maintained. You know, he is much more pro-war than Biden is, with the exception, of course, of Gaza. But on the Gaza issue, Trump is even more aggressive than Biden is. So, you know.
The reason these guys go after him so vociferously, I don't think that it's about his personality, Jake. I think that it's about they don't like that Donald Trump said no when a lot of them wanted to start a ridiculous war.
Like what is it? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make any sense. What war? The Pentagon is angry that Trump didn't want to start a war. What war do they want to start? Like the Pentagon is like upset they didn't. Then why isn't the Pentagon upset that Biden didn't invade Iran or whatever? What are you talking about?
You're ascribing worldviews, I think, based on gut. I can't really tell where you're coming from on it. There's no evidence.
Based on people that I've talked to in the Trump administration,
sure, John
about
Bolton,
what John
sure.
Kelly wanted to do, John Bolton, Liz
What?
Cheney.
What do they want to do?
These people have a consistent
John Kelly
worldview.
was at the Department of Homeland Security, and then he was chief of staff. He was not weighing in. I don't even know what you're talking about. But let me ask you something about John Kelly specifically, because you said the other day, quote, I guarantee John Kelly talked to somebody on Kamala Harris's campaign beforehand, before he did this interview. Now, I've spoken with people in John Kelly's circle, and I've spoken with people in the Kamala Harris campaign. They say there's been no communication the entire time. So where did that come from?
Oh, I'm highly skeptical of that, Jake. You know the way that these attacks work. You know the way that these people...
It really is crazy how J.D. Vance's arguments literally come down to, dude, just trust me. Like, he's literally just like, yeah, they want to start, like, wars. What war? You know, I've, like, talked to people. I just like I'm a vibes guy, you know? I mean, that is fascism, right? Like, why would a fascist ever use data? Why would an anti-empiricist ever, like, care about data as a concept, you know? Vibes.
People are often vetted by a campaign
So you made it up.
before something goes out there. No, I said that the American media and the American Democratic Party apparatus works a certain way. If it comes out that John Kelly never even spoke with a person,
How would you prove that?
in the Kamala Harris
I'm telling you
orbit,
that.
then I'm happy. You're telling me that based on secondhand conversations with John Kelly, and it's interesting. We've now spent, Jake.
This is like the fourth time I've seen JD Vance in an interview, basically in the defending the I made it up thing. He did this too with the cats and dogs, where he's like, yeah, we have no evidence of it, but you have no evidence that it's not happening. And I heard from a guy that it happened. So he keeps doing this.
3 minutes talking about John Kelly. If it is true that he never spoke with anyone in Kamala Harris's orbit, I'm happy to apologize to John Kelly for misstating how he delivered this news to the Atlantic magazine. But let's talk about who did he deliver this news to? To Jeffrey Goldberg, a guy who lied the United States into the Iraq War, which led to the deaths of millions of innocent Arabs and thousands of innocent Americans. You don't go to that guy if you don't.
Are we concerned about the death of innocent Arabs now, or is that just something we're saying because it's politically acceptable to pretend that you wouldn't have supported the Iraq War back then?
Don't have a particular ideological motive. I think that's what's going on. If I'm wrong, I'm happy to say that I'm wrong.
I think it's interesting that you think that a magazine writer lied the American people into war.
Well, he encouraged it. He wrote stories that were dishonest.
He wrote a story about the gassing of the Kurds in I forget if it was the Atlantic or the New Yorker, but I'm actually referring to John Kelly talking to the New York Times.
He wrote stories, by the way, where he took what intelligence officials in the American Pentagon bureaucracy said and wrote it as the gospel truth. And this highlights the entire point that I'm making about Trump's foreign policy, is this is a guy who wants to use American troops sparingly. He wants peace through strength. It's why his foreign policy was so successful during his first term. It's all the same people who were wrong about Iraq. They were wrong about the quagmire in Afghanistan. They were wrong about Syria. They were wrong about everything. And now they're coming after Donald Trump because he actually has a realistic.
But Trump continued the war in Afghanistan. He delayed the withdrawal. And he continued the drone strikes in Syria. What do you mean wrong about Syria? We never invaded Syria on the ground. We engaged in drone strikes there, which Donald Trump ramped up during his presidency. What are you talking about?
And cautious foreign policy.
I'm talking about people who worked for Donald Trump in his first administration. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about not just John Kelly, but Mark Milley, who was the Trump-appointed chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
You're wrong. There are U.S. bases in Syria right now. Yeah, and they're based. The U.S. still occupies some Syrian territory. Nah, that's bullshit. That's not invading Syria. That's not Assadist territory. That's Kurdish territory, part of future Kurdistan. We're there with the Rojavans. Well, we abandoned them. We should be there more. We should have 1 billion troops over there in eastern Syria.
Obeyed Trump's direct orders on troop redeployments in Syria.
And I'm talking about the guy that had your job.
A massive violation of his constitutional oath, by the way.
I'm talking about the guy that had your job before Donald Trump's supportive crowd wanted to hang him, Vice President Mike Pence, who said, as you know, that Trump put himself before the Constitution. I'm talking about General Mattis, also Secretary.
He looks like he's wearing a mask all the time. And I don't mean that in some, like, TikTok psychologist telling lies from truth, you know, body language detector kind of way. I mean that he physically looks like he has a rubber mask over his face. Yeah, handsome Jack shit. If handsome Jack was ugly as ugly Jack. It's the sunken eyes. It is true. He does have like a remarkably sunken pair of eyes. Like it's part of it is his naturally like very dark, very thick eyelashes. Part of it is his giant protruding brow. His eyes are permanently cloaked in shadow. It's crazy.
Secretary of Defense in Trump's administration. I'm talking about Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense, who told me that Trump does have fascistic tendencies. John Bolton, H.R. McMaster, Alyssa Farah Griffin.
Okay, Jake,
These are Trump administration
officials. Listen to every Trump administration official? You know one reason?
Okay. Oh, you're just going to listen to every person who was close to the president and relied upon during his presidency? Are you just going to accept the massive consensus on the issue with lots of individuals who have no political incentive to lie about this because right now attacking Donald Trump guarantees that you'll never like have a job in the Republican Party again? Incredible stuff. Truly incredible.
reason why Kamala Harris doesn't have as many people criticizing her is because she doesn't fire people who fail. That's why we haven't had a real audit of the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, is because Kamala Harris protects failures in government. Donald Trump fires them. And I'd much rather have the president who fires people who screw up. Now, Jake, no, this is an important point. Kamala Harris.
You did not fire Mike Pence.
Kamala Harris.
He did not fire
Mark
Milley.
Kamala Harris.
He did not fire John.
He fired a lot of those people, Jake, and he did because they weren't.
Not those people. I say Tapper's doing a good job here, actually. I think he's doing quite excellently. It is worth noting, by the way, the only reason the first Trump presidency wasn't as bad as it could have been, in addition to the fact that Trump is incompetent, is also the fact that a lot of the people surrounding Trump weren't really on board with the full fascism thing. Some people in the Trump administration from the get-go were like, yeah, this is our chance. But a lot of them were neocons. A lot of them were people who weren't willing to like fully see it out. And as a consequence of that, the first Trump administration had like 50 revolving doors. People were getting fired and rehired all the time. That's not going to happen this time.
Doing their job. But this is the thing, Jake. We've now spent 5 minutes talking about people in Donald Trump's staff
who think he's not fit for office.
He fired.
He
didn't fire. He just literally just listed people who he didn't fire.
Fired. Oh, they didn't think he was unfit for office until they had a falling out with him because he fired them, and we're not.
He did fire. You could just say anything. You could literally just anything. These are people. He didn't fire those people. He didn't fire them.
Policy.
Well, we're actually
talk about how Americans can't afford groceries.
We're actually
Can we
talk about anything else?
Can't afford the cost
Can we talk about any other subject, please? Not the one that's like really alarming and makes me look bad, where I'm running out of lies, I'm running out of deflections.
We're actually talking about the fact that a lot of people out there in Erie, Pennsylvania, they're the ones who suffer and die when people like Mark Esper and Mark Milley don't obey the commander-in-chief's orders.
We're talking about Donald Trump and what he says.
Yes. And
Donald Trump says.
And you'd much rather talk about what Donald Trump allegedly said than what Donald Trump did in office.
I'm talking about
what he did in office, Jake.
What he said publicly.
1.5% inflation.
The military to go after the enemy within, which is the American people.
He did not say that, Jake.
The enemy within?
He said that he was going to send the military after the American people. Show me the quote where he said
he was going to. He said the enemy within.
He said far left lunatics.
He literally said
about
this.
people rioting
and Schiff.
He's talking about people rioting after the election. I think
the Pelosi's were rioting after the election.
He said
Adam Schiff was rioting after the election.
You're using two separate phrases. He said about using the military that far left lunatics, people who riot in the wake of an election, people who burn down American cities in the summer of 2020, yes, we should have a federal law enforcement
This is what
response.
he said to
federal law enforcement isn't sending the military, by the way. No, he's so weaselly, even on the subject. Like, even he walks back so many points, and then when he arrives at the point he wants to state, he still has to walk that one back too.
Joe Rogan on Friday, the enemy within that he wants the military to go after.
No, this is
the enemy within, a bigger problem than Kim Jong-un.
The second part.
We have people that are really bad people that I really think want to make this country unsuccessful. That's who the enemy within.
And did he say that he wants to use the military against those people? Here's the game.
Use the military to go after the enemy within.
Here's the game that you're playing.
Here's the game that you're playing. You're taking two consistent Trump statements, one where he describes the enemy within and the other where he says he wants to use the military, and you're assuming that they're related. Those are two separate definitions of the enemy within.
Said that can I answer the question, please? He said that he wanted to use the military to go after far left lunatics who are rioting, and he also called them the enemy within. He separately, in a totally different context, in a totally different conversation, said that Nancy Pelosi and
to be clear, this would literally be like if Trump said like Jews are the enemy within, and then later he said he wanted to use the military to arrest the enemy within. Like this is the most like flagrant, transparent, open, indefensible. Yeah, it's a fucking parody. Like, no. When he clearly outlaid his plans to arrest his opposition within the party, they're actually like he meant two totally different things when he used this exact same term in the exact same context.
Adam Schiff were threats to this country.
Were the enemy
He
within.
Never
were the
said,
enemy within. He said they were the enemy
so
within.
every time he uses the exact same phrase, we assume that he
So you're just saying every time he refers to the enemy within, he means the enemy within? You're telling me that when he uses that term, sometimes he can mean it one way, and the other time you're saying that he can't call for the execution and deploying the military against the enemy within without also claiming that American citizens are the enemy within? You're telling me that words have meaning? And they call us postmodernists. Jesus Christ. The radical left likes to play with words so that nothing means anything anymore. They say that a woman can have a penis. Meanwhile, like the VP candidate.
I don't know. I don't throw around the term of enemy within to talk about using the military against going American people.
And you're asking his vice president, but you won't let me answer the question. I'm telling you.
He hasn't asked a question. Like he's not even being allowed to outline the point here. Notice how JD Vance is getting a lot more talkative and a lot more willing to interrupt here. This is a point. Like, again, he is a handler. You have to think of him in that context. Yeah, he's a puppet of Teal or whatever, but he's a handler. His job here is like he takes charge once they actually win the presidency. He's just trying to desperately like sweep up all the horrid shit Trump says because no one calls Trump in it. And even if they do call Trump in it, he'll just like blather his way past it. No one holds him to the point.
That Donald Trump has said, and I agree with him, that we should use the U.S. military to go after
Americans.
People who riot, who burn down our cities.
And this was what John Kelly was. This was what John Kelly was alarmed by: the idea of using the U.S. military to go after Americans. That's what he said.
Donald Trump never said Americans writ large.
What are you? He's literally. Who's rioting? The Chinese? He literally did. Hitler isn't saying that he'll put all Germans in concentration camps. Okay.
Keep on putting words in his mouth and
are they
mouth.
Or are they not Americans?
Far left people who commit acts of violence, who riot. And
now you're doing a very narrow definition of what he said, which is not what he said. That's not what he said. But let me ask you. Let me ask you the bigger question.
He did say that, Jake. He did. He said that he wanted to use the U.S. military. Let me clarify.
Go after far left lunatics, yes. And then he also added
people who were rioting and looting.
And
he never said.
He added Schiff.
Said.
And then he added the Pelosi's. And then he added people that don't want the country to succeed.
He said that Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi he used in a separate context and a separate conversation. And what
this is why I stress what I do. This is why I say, like, you need to insult them. Like, this is a level of disingenuous wordplay that is so flagrant and so obvious to any observer who isn't already bought in on the dogma that you have to just insult him. Like, you have to just see, like, you're directly like this is pathetic. Like, this is the clear as day example of him saying he wants to use the military against Americans, and you're his handler, like you're massaging, you'll say anything at this point. It's like it's an insult to your intelligence. The idea that this is a sincere disagreement is laughable. And Tapper knows, Tapper's a smart guy, like whatever disagreements I have with, like he is a smart guy. You know, I think Tapper's doing an excellent job here. I know that he would just get accused of like partisanship if he directly insulted JD Vance. But like, I mean, past a point.
What you're doing is you're smashing two totally different conversations.
Fox asked him about this last week, and he didn't take issue with it. He said the enemy within is the biggest threat to this country.
But did he say the enemy within, that he's going to use the military against Nancy Pelosi? Donald Trump offered Nancy Pelosi the National Guard on January the 6th, and according to private emails, she rejected it.
So let's talk about things that he wants to do that are feeding into this concern that people like John Kelly and General Mattis and General Milley have. He said on Friday, Special Counsel Jack Smith...
He is lying there. Yeah, Nancy Pelosi doesn't control the National Guard. Like, that's not her job.
To get thrown out of the country. He's threatened to arrest election officials who cheated. We know that he believes a lot of people cheated that did not cheat.
If you violate the law, you should be arrested. Yes.
No one disagrees with that, but he's talking
about... you do, based on the way you're asking the question.
No.
Tapper, you have to realize right now, if they win, you're going to jail. You know that, right? They will kill anyone. You look at him. Look at what he just said. If you violate the law, you get arrested. Well, yeah, everyone agrees with that. Clearly, you don't. So everyone. So it's literally like a 1-step, 2-step, 3-step. Anyone who violates the law should go to jail. Anyone I say violates the law has violated the law. If you say those who I claim have violated the law haven't, then you're in favor of law violating and you should go to jail too. This is how it happens every single time. Like, this is this is a threat. You are being threatened.
No, based on the fact that he's accused people that didn't break the law of breaking the law when it comes to the election. And if you want to revisit that, I'm happy to. But Liz Cheney, he said, should be put before a war tribunal. None of that sounds fascist to you at all?
No, of course it doesn't. Of
Putting
course
Liz
it
Cheney
doesn't.
before a military tribunal?
First of all, I don't buy into the premise of what you're saying, Jake, because I
things he
just
said.
on things that I know that he said, on things that I know that he said, you're imputing things, you're taking words out of context, you're taking two separate conversations and
the introduction of like disingenuous internet era debate politics to the modern fascist dogma has like the soyification of fascism has been such a mistake, man. Do you think it was like this back in Nazi Germany, where you had Nazi officials in like 33 being like, no, you're taking Hitler out of context? I just feel like, I don't know, it's weaselly in a way. Yes, they probably did, yeah. I don't know. There's something about this aesthetic. Maybe it's because of the adjacency to my aesthetic, right? The argument like you're being taken out of context. This to me is like 60-year-olds don't say this. This is like people like me say this, you know? And J.D. Vance grew up in these, like, we know for a fact that J.D. Vance is, like, highly associated with, like, you know, Poltards and, like, internet Nazis and shit like that. We know that he gets a lot of his rhetoric from those spaces. There's a very reasonable possibility that he's, like, familiar with myself, Destiny, or Hassan, or all three, which I guess just makes it unsettling that this guy who is within a hair's breadth of being able to pull the lever on the death camps is, like, employing that logic, you know? Or lack of logic, I guess. Employing those rhetorical tactics designed to obfuscate meaning.
Pretending that they were made at the exact same time. So I'm rejecting the premise of your question. I frankly don't believe what you're saying about Donald Trump's words. If you'd like to put
The question was, isn't it fascistic to put a civilian in front of a military tribunal? I'm rejecting the premise of that question.
A clip and actually put him in context, I think the American people would realize that Donald Trump is a hell of a lot more reasonable than the people like Liz Cheney who would like to lie us into war. Now, Jake,
He's not. He looks really bad in context, too.
To remember, I mean, step back a little bit. Well, ask yourself a basic question about network integrity. You guys talked about the Russia hoax nonstop.
The FBI was investigating it. The FBI was investigating it, and so we covered them.
And so you took the words of unnamed FBI agents and put them on your network as if they were the gospel truth. You did it again and again.
Tapper, again, like you need to understand. First of all, this wasn't a hoax. This was real. Second of all, this is a threat. Donald Trump has said over and over and over again, the enemy within includes the media. This is a threat. You are being threatened. This is why the Washington Post didn't provide the planned endorsement of Kamala Harris. They are already kowtowing to the threat of a Trump presidency. There is a metaphorical gun to your head, Tapper.
Again, a viewer of your network would have believed that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin conspired in 2016.
No.
That was totally and preposterously false.
No.
Well, that's
what you
Yeah, it turned out it wasn't Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. It was actually the Kremlin and several, like, Trump officials. Like, quite a lot of them, actually. So it was true. The only thing that wasn't proven was that Donald Trump personally communicated with Vladimir Putin and conspired, like, directly. They just had people like, you know, Manafort or whatever.
Just said is false. We covered an FBI investigation. I don't know why you want to talk about the FBI investigation.
You covered it in a way that gave credence to anonymous sources' accusations. You did it yourself. Your network did.
You did that with the cats and dogs story, which turned out to be false. You literally defended this exact behavior. Shouldn't I be elevating the concerns of my constituents when I lie about Haitians eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio? Vance has successfully deflected from the question. Yeah, Vance has succeeded here in that he has now moved it away. And this is what happens when you debate anyone who debates in bad faith. Like, they will not want to stay on the subject that makes them look bad, so they'll go like, remember 20 years ago when this other thing happened? What? Why are we talking about that? Why? Well, because they don't want to talk about the real issue, which is that Trump is unambiguously calling for the American military to be used to crush, like, his opposition.
Did it, Jake? But again, can we talk about the issues that Americans care most about?
I'm talking about things that Donald Trump has said.
Yes.
If you have an issue
Kamala
with whether or
Harris,
not he's talking about the economy enough, That's between you and your running mate. I'm talking about things he has said this week.
Every single rally that he does, he talks about how he wants to unleash American energy so we can lower the cost of groceries. He talks about the fact that housing has become unaffordable. He talks about the wide open border, Jake. Kamala Harris and her allies, you know, it's interesting. Kamala Harris and her media allies, and I would put CNN in this category. You guys seem to care.
They're not. The CNN, this is absolutely not an ally to Kamala Harris, even remotely. Again, Tapper, this is a threat. This is a threat.
I'll tell you that, they wouldn't.
Well, they should watch your network more, because you guys seem to care more about Donald Trump's past than the future of
He said this stuff this week, and you just brought up the Russian investigate. It's like, it's beyond parody, dude. There's no coherence in the strategy that he uses to deflect. You need to get another internet debate lord up against him. Jesus, where's Destiny? Does he have CNN credentials? Can we put him in like a hat and mustache or something? He'd be perfect for this. I can't be in a room with JD Vance. Destiny would be perfect for this, okay? Send him in. All right? Tag Steve. Like, these deflection tactics are not something that legacy media is capable of dealing with. JD Vance literally just pivoted from, well, rather than talk about the statements that Donald Trump made this week, I would rather talk about your covering of the accurate Russia investigation 8 years ago, or whatever, 6 years ago. But let's not talk about the past. Let's talk about the future. Jesus Christ.
The American people. We're running this campaign on making the American dream.
I'm specifically
affordable.
asking about how Donald Trump is going to be president in the future should he win, and then we're being told
he's going to pursue economic policies that lower the cost of groceries and make life more affordable again. He talks about it every single day on the campaign trail, and so do I. What you're talking about is Guess
what else he talks about every single day on the campaign trail? Hey, we're going to watch the Madison Square Garden rally later. In fact, it's in an hour and a half, I believe, if I'm remembering the timing correctly, if he's not late to it. We'll see. Is he going to talk about the enemy within?
An anonymously sourced story, or one guy
nothing anonymously sourced,
or who one guy who was a disgruntled employee.
I told you,
five other people pushed back against him and said that what he said was.
It's going on right now. Yeah, but Trump's not there.
A lot going on.
How's it going? Let's see how the Madison Square Garden rally is going so far.
A lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
That's great, dude. That's fantastic, man. That's great. Going great.
Dishonest. So why don't we talk about the policy that's affecting American citizens and not what Donald Trump allegedly said, according to one guy who's pissed off because he got fired by Donald Trump?
I didn't bring up
any of the
things that he said. He said, I didn't bring up.
Brought up John Kelly, and that I just described.
I brought up John Kelly's view of Donald Trump. I didn't bring up John Kelly talking about what Donald Trump said about Hitler's generals. I didn't bring that up. I talked about John Kelly's view of Trump based on something Trump has been saying in the last week. So that's what I asked about.
So John Kelly makes accusations that are rejected by 5 people.
Again, you're talking about something I didn't bring up.
I think that maybe
Tapper brought up stuff Trump said in public.
Implicates his overall judgment. And I think the fact that he has a worldview that's so oppositional to peace and prosperity suggests that he's not an honest arbiter here. This is not a guy, John Kelly, going to brag to Jeffrey Goldberg, who is interested in the American truth or is interested.
This is what Vosh means when he says you can't debate this. People, I got it before, but I really get it now. I hope like this is what makes it clear, right? Like this is a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about. And like debate is only a tool to power for these people. And they should be engaged with only, well, it's a little bit different in this case because JD Vance is literally a VP candidate, so like he has to be engaged with no matter what. There's no like ignoring this issue. But yeah, it's they don't believe in anything. They don't believe in anything but killing you. When they look at you, they imagine only like driving a knife into you. That is all they care about.
In telling an honest account of Donald Trump. He's a guy with an axe to grind because Donald Trump fired him and disagreed with him on policy.
So all those 10 people, including the former vice president, Mike Pence, all of these people have this horribly damaged worldview, and they're all just going after Donald Trump because they want to send people into war? That's really your argument?
Absolutely.
It's not like these are conservative.
Absolutely, that's my
These
argument.
are not conservative.
They all these different people, all of them made accusations of Trump that were false, that perfectly line up with statements that he continuously makes in the campaign trail because they wanted to get him involved in war. And we know that Donald Trump was generally pro-war and very aggressive and drone striked a lot, but they wanted more wars. What war? I don't know. But like a bunch of different people in a bunch of different positions, they just really, really, really wanted Donald Trump to do like some kind of war. I don't really know what war, but some war, and that's why all of them said negative things about him that perfectly correspond to the stuff he's saying in public.
Republicans, these aren't conservative Republicans who are concerned about Donald Trump. They're not. That's not right.
All of these people, Jake, they came into office thinking that they could control Donald Trump. That when he said he wanted peace in the world,
Vance thought he could control Donald Trump.
Yes, he did. And when he found out, when he found out that he couldn't, they all turned on Donald Trump, and a lot of them got fired. And we're running, and we're trying to staff the government with people who are going to govern according to principles of peace and prosperity.
Let me ask you.
They're pissed off about it.
Let me ask you, because we're being told that we're over.
Yeah. One more question, because we have to go to this rally.
You are running to be vice president of the United States.
Of course.
And there is a 50-50 chance, maybe better, I don't know, that you're going to succeed. Are you running to be vice president of the United States, or are you running to be vice president of the red states? Because if you win, and there's a decent chance you will, you're going to be vice president of childless cat ladies. You're going to be vice president of legal Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio. You're going to be their vice president, too. Are you running to do that?
Jake, of course I'm running to be the vice president of all Americans.
Of all Americans. Not of those people, but of all Americans.
I'm running because I want people to be able to afford a good life in this country. You know how I grew up. You know that I grew up in a family where things were often...
Remember, he has said that the legal Haitian migrants in Springfield should have their immigration revoked. When he says Americans, he means, like, quote, Americans. The same way Hitler would talk about Germans. You know, when Hitler said Germans, he did not mean everyone with German citizenship.
And tough. I want, whether you're in a blue state or a red state, whether you're going to vote for Trump or you're going to vote for Harris, I want you to be able to have a good life in this country. But what's not going to happen with the broken leadership in Washington, D.C. Let me give you a statistic, Jake, because here is what the leadership of people like Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi, and yes, Mike Pence, over 30 years in this country has led to. A person with a bachelor's degree lives 7 years longer than a person without a bachelor's degree. There are a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm sure Donald Trump is going to do a lot to fix our healthcare system, considering that he's had like 9 years to come up with a healthcare plan. It hasn't come up with one yet. Concepts of a plan.
Who've gotten rich and powerful off of American decline. Some of them have had R's next to their name. Some of them have had D's next to their name. And the first person who I believe is really putting the interests of the American people first is Donald J. Trump. So yes, we're going to be the president and the vice president for all people. The only way to do that is to reject the failed consensus.
All right.
Thanks, Jake.
I think Tapper did a good job. I just really wish people in the media would acknowledge that they have a gun to their head.